So imagine logging into work, staring at your screen and feeling like the simplest tasks have become overwhelming mountains to climb. Every meeting, every discussion, every decision feels like it's draining more and more from your energy. The fire that once burned in your soul, the passion and the ambition that you had about your job are nowhere to be found, and you dread every task and every challenge that you're confronted with. Does that sound familiar? If so, you're not alone, because recently I've noticed in my comment sections and in my DMs that many UX writers, but also other UX professionals, have been expressing these exact same experiences. Some even have said that they're considering switching careers because of that. So I started to do some research and stumbled across a phenomenon called UX burnout, which seems to affect many, especially seasoned UX professionals, and with that, UX writers as well. So let's talk about it. Hello, my name is Kat and I teach people about writing in tech, and on this channel you will find everything that you need to know, especially about UX writing. So if you want to learn more about all of that, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell. And if you want some in-depth UX writing knowledge or even earn a certificate, make sure you check out my UX writing online courses. They will give you profound and hands-on practical knowledge starting at $29 only, and you can find them on my website writewithdrkat.com. Link is also in the description box below. So as I said, recently I came across some comments, DMs, and ultimately blog posts about burnout in UX professionals, which seems to be a big problem in our field. And doing further research on it, I stumbled across several interesting Reddit threads about the matter, and it became very clear that this is not randomly happening to UX professionals by chance, but it actually has a lot to do with the nature of UX tasks and the organization of UX tasks in many companies. And that means that most of us run risk to experience feeling burned out, which is a serious danger to our mental and physical health. So let's take a closer look to understand this problem a little better and also see how we can maybe prevent burnout from happening to us. Now, my journey about this topic started with this Reddit thread right here called UX Dread and Burnout. And as you can see, there are over 100 comments from UX professionals, especially UX designers, who describe feeling burned out in their job in one way or another. One UX professional, for example, said, "My energy and my enthusiasm have taken a dive." Other users say they cannot focus anymore, or that they're anxious that they won't be able to perform anymore as they are just drained by their job. One user even said, "I was envious this morning of a woman working at a flower stand creating beautiful bunches stress-free." And many UX professionals in this thread seem to relate to that. And I found another interesting source on the matter, a blog post for which the author interviewed 40 UX professionals, and 90% of them report to have experienced or to currently experience feelings of being burned out. So based on what we hear from our community, the UX community, the risk of drifting into burnout seems to be a real problem in the field. But before we take a look at the reasons for that, let's first do some groundwork. Because to understand all of this a little better, we first have to understand what burnout actually is in general. And the World Health Organization says burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And this syndrome is characterized by 3 dimensions. Number 1, feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. Number 2, increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativism and cynicism related to one's job. And number 3, reduced professional efficacy. So that means you're less productive and more exhausted and more negative towards your job. And this is exactly what we read in this Reddit thread, right? And there are also several more Reddit threads with more UX professionals saying they are experiencing this. But why is it that burnout is such a thing in the field of UX? I mean, after all, we don't walk through literal fire, we don't fight for people's life, we don't do open heart surgery, we basically just sit behind a screen and draft concepts, choose and apply patterns, or design with words. So what is it that gives UXers a high risk of burning out? Let's answer that question by taking a look at the most commonly mentioned reasons. First, of course, there is the complexity of UX tasks, right? Be it UX designers, UX writers, or UX researchers, we're all required to solve complex problems in a creative way each and every day, often under tight deadlines. And this again requires a tough balance between working in a creative way and working in a structured way. It also forces us to be both knowledgeable and innovative, and be so fast. For example, one Reddit user says, "Everyone expects genius from me and polished design solutions at a rate that is just unrealistic." Second, and we all probably have experienced this, UX professionals are often stuck between multiple stakeholders. So we have to balance different, sometimes conflicting interests like user goals, business goals, and technical restraints. And this constant balancing and the conflicts arising from this constant tension as well cause huge cognitive load and also frustration and exhaustion, because sometimes there simply is not a solution that meets all interests, and sometimes we're the ones getting blamed for that. And there is a great quote I found in a blog post on this topic, which says, "We are starting to see UX become a victim of its own success. Companies in highly competitive markets are realizing that UX designers can not only help customers achieve their goals, but also help the company achieve its goals of increasing growth and revenue more directly." In some industries, there has been a shift from focusing on what is good for the user to what is good for the business. And as an example for that, the author mentions conversion rates, because increasing conversion rates is often a goal that UX designers and UX writers are supposed to reach, but it is not necessarily a true UX goal, right? It's a sales and marketing goal. And that leads me to probably one of the most severe challenges that UX professionals have to face in their jobs. And if you are a UX designer, UX researcher, UX writer, you have very likely experienced this as well. And that is that while early in the days, UX was the center of the product development process. You know, UX researchers brought in user data, UX designers came up with the concept and architecture of the product, and us UX writers brought in content and verbal communication. Today, with all these stakeholders demanding to participate in the product building process and all the decisions, UX increasingly becomes a bystander and just one of the many things to consider, but not the main thing. So very often there is no real user-centered design. The author of another blog post describing their own experience with UX burnout says, "There is just a feeling of low impact and no purpose, little choice, little freedom." And the author of another blog post on the matter calls this a justification problem, because UX now has to fight for being allowed to bring in the user perspective. Another UX professional in another source pins this down to basically, people tell us how to design. So there's less and less respect for UX as the profession that knows how to design user-centered products. Suddenly, all kinds of stakeholders want to have a say, especially the business-related stakeholders, and the voice of UX kind of vanishes in the noise of all of that. In one Reddit thread, one UXer says that we use established best practices and UI kits so it's easier for the devs, which of course allows faster and cheaper shipping of features and updates. And fighting for UX to be seen and heard and prioritized may have several severe consequences for UXers, like for example, resignation or the feeling of loneliness, because we indeed often have to fight and advocate for ourselves. And this dynamic is only intensified by the fact that there is, as another UX professional calls it in an interview, the lack of or very small understanding of UX processes and UX roles and how UX works and why it is important. And I have experienced that myself. For many people, it is just a buzzword. Many people use it, few know what it actually means. And all of this, again, leads to UX not being properly prioritized in stressful situations. Or as one Reddit user puts it, UX UI design is always crippled by roadmaps and lousy project management. And speaking of lousy project management, poor project structure and UX neglecting organizational design is also named as one of the major reasons for burnout among UX professionals. More precisely, endless iterative processes and high uncertainty regarding project results. For example, another UX professional being interviewed by an author who wrote about UX burnout said, "I worked my butt off over projects that were never implemented." We've all been there, I guess. And ultimately, we are all aware of the massive global layoffs in the international tech industry. So there are, of course, also many UX professionals who are just scared of losing their job, right? So they suck it up, they don't criticize management, they stick with jobs and they stay in environments that they're not happy with because they just feel like they need to. So these are the major reasons UX professionals experience burnout according to UX professionals themselves. Now, let's breathe for a second. Again, if you are experiencing all of this, you're not alone. I've been through all of this a couple of times, but if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I don't do that anymore. I don't work like this anymore. So let's shift our focus a little and see what we can do to prevent and avoid getting burnt out in our job. And first of all, you now know the risk factors. If you are a junior or an intermediate level UX professional, listen up closely. Rewind that video and listen up closely to what those risk factors are. And I know it's a tough job market out there, but please ask the right questions in your job interview. Ask about the priority of UX. Ask about stakeholder management. Ask about decision-making processes. Make sure you ask these questions, of course, in a kind and respectful manner, but also make sure you do get the answers to those questions, okay? Next, and this has helped me personally big time, manage yourself properly. Let your work environment be this raging storm and let your desk, your laptop, your routines, your time management be the calm eye of that storm. Work with task management tools and for God's sake, work with a time management method that gives you regular breaks, okay? Because as one Reddit user puts it, when I find myself having trouble focusing and feeling hopelessly frustrated, it's usually because I'm overdue for a break. And that's also my personal experience. You need to take breaks throughout your workday, okay? And if you feel like a break is overdue, it is probably absolutely too late to take a break, okay? So make sure you have regular breaks throughout your workday, even when you don't feel like you need one, okay? Switch off your phone, mute Slack or Teams or whatever dumpster fire of a business messenger you use. Take a quick walk, sing along to a country song, that's what I do, and then you're good to go for your next block of focus time, okay? And speaking of focus time, make sure you have some. We talked about a lack of understanding of UX, and that's exactly why many project managers and stakeholders schedule a lot of meetings with us, okay? And if you are one of those people who love to schedule meetings with us, listen up. UX designers, UX researchers, UX writers, and our amazing friends, the software developers, need focus time in their day, okay? So please understand that and stop throwing meetings at us mindlessly, okay? And UXers, block some time in your calendar to work fully focused and protect that time because as we've learned, we need to solve complex problems, which is exhausting in itself, but it is even more exhausting if we have to interrupt our work every 30 minutes. And when you have focus time, make it count. Eliminate distractions, grab some noise cancelling headphones, some focus music, and then get to work, okay? You will see that getting into flow state and solving problems in a flow state will not only make you more productive and more efficient, but it will also feel more fulfilling to you. However, especially when you find yourself working in a more chaotic working environment, please also make sure that you and your surroundings know your role, okay? Your specific role, your responsibilities, and your authority when it comes to decision making. For example, in my company, there's only one person that can overrule my writing decisions, and that is the general managing director. So the most powerful person in the company. No stakeholder, no project manager, no UX designer can overrule my writing decisions. Of course, they can give me feedback, and usually their feedback is super valuable, but when it comes down to a decision, it takes my go for things to go. Make sure you know how that is in your case, and make sure everybody else knows as well. And when all of that is defined and known, also set your boundaries and protect them. When you know about your tasks and responsibilities and you have established your self-management routines, you basically know what you need to do and how you need to do it. So dare to say no if someone tries to interfere with that. I know it's hard, and I know management might threaten you with theirs, but you will almost literally not survive this job when you don't learn how to say no, okay? Find a polite, charming way to say no, master the art of saying no, offer alternatives. Who else can do it? When else can you do it? Whatever helps, but don't let just anybody give you all kinds of tasks and deadlines, please. And I know this is especially hard because you want to do a good job. You empathize with the needs of your stakeholders. You know why things should get done right now, but you have to acknowledge that you are only human. As one Reddit user puts it, the hardest part was admitting that I have limits. And the same person proceeds by saying, instead of starting a side hustle, I'm going for a bike ride. And I love this because this is also my next piece of advice. Establish hobbies and passions apart from your job. There is a specific kind of burnout that I found mentioned in a blog post on our topic, and this kind of burnout can be described as identity burnout, and that is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by over-identifying with your job or profession. Now, for many of us, UX is a passion, right? We love to dive into patterns and play around with them. We love to nerd out about our job, and due to the fact that we also have to dive deep in order to solve complex problems and be creative, we might tend to over-identify with our jobs, and we need to break that bond a little, or at least loosen it up a little, because sometimes working as a UX writer or a UX designer all day, every day, and then spending your evenings and weekends reading about UX and listening to the podcasts, and you subscribe to those newsletters that tell you all about the layoffs and the tech industry and all of that might be a little too consuming. So find yourself hobbies that have nothing, zero, to do with your profession, like sports, bread making, arts and crafts, and some personal advice from me, very, very personal. Try something that nurtures your spirit, because building apps and websites is something very technical, very factual. And us humans, we are spiritual beings. And if you're not religious, of course, that's fine, that's okay. Then you might want to read about philosophy and ideas, okay? Whatever you're curious about, just so you can see that there is a world beyond your job. Because when you're affected by burnout, your job is all you see. And we don't want that for us. And ultimately, my last piece of advice, seek support. First, seek support from your team. You are on a team, a literal team, and technically ensuring a great user experience should be the ultimate goal for all of you, okay? So why do you need to fight for this all alone in the first place? Also, your manager and HR, if your manager doesn't see your pain, but also reach out to other UX professionals. Find a mentor and talk to them about your struggles. And of course, also see if you can find a therapist or a coach to talk to, because sometimes we only realize we are at risk of burnout when it's almost too late. And sometimes there are also underlying personal problems that add to our plate. And this is also mentioned by some Reddit users. They say, hey, when you reach the age of a senior UX professional, you're in your early to late 30s. And that's also the time your parents might get sick and you still have to function at work. You still have to solve those problems. You still have to be creative. You still have to balance those stakeholder interests. withstand those conflicts, okay? And trust me, this will wear your personal resources down like nothing else. So get help, find a therapist. And if you can't find a therapist, find an online therapist. Can't find an online therapist, find a coach. Don't have money for a coach? Try one of those therapy apps, okay? But get help, because trust me, my number one experience with burnout in my career is once you break into it, it's like breaking through the ice layer on a frozen lake and almost drowning in the cold water. You might make it out alive again, but number one, you will be damn cold for a very long time. And number two, you will always be scared of lakes. So don't let them get you, okay? And with that, I think this is a good place to end this video. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you have any thoughts or experiences with burnout in UX that you would like to share, feel free to drop me a comment. If you want to read more about the topic, I put all of the resources in the description box below. Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Make sure you check out writewithdrakat.com for my courses and review services. And also make sure you follow me on Instagram for more free tips and tricks about UX writing and writing in tech in general. And apart from that, as always, keep on writing, enjoy the process, take care of yourself, and I hope to see you sometime soon.